What exactly made you to invest in grower Zampa or wine industry as such?
Yeah, it's actually fairly straightforward. For many years, I visited India and tried Indian wines during business trips. And then subsequently, when I decided to become an investor and set up an investment management company in Singapore,
Right.
there was this opportunity of becoming a small shareholder in Grover, which we took. It was more passion thing and driven mostly by two factors. One is that I've tried the wines and I found them at that time to be okay.
Okay.
And the second factor is I think that the rise of the middle class in India would lead to a wine story similar to what China has experienced or what Japan has experienced in the 60s.
Right.
Which is widespread adoption of wine by the middle class.
Okay.
So these are the two drivers for the investment decision, and it turned out that about a couple of 2-3 years ago, we increased our stake in Grover and decided to the group chapter 4 seasons and continue the story.
Okay. Are these Deepak Roy and Ravi Jain continue to be a shareholder, or they're totally exited by now?
No, they are small shareholders. They're still almost all the money that we invested in Grover was in primary funds.
Right.
Almost all.
Ravi, your shareholding is 70% right now in Grover Zampa, right?
No. It's almost 50%.
Almost 50%.
50. Yeah.
Oh, almost 50%. And Baramati Wines, are there any shareholding by Diageo Group still, or not much?
Yes. No. The Diageo and Charoza, HCC have both completely exited.
Oh, they both, all, Ajit Gulabchand, everything, they all exited.
Completely exited. Same thing for Diageo, United Spirits, they completely exited.
You said, you mentioned Chinese market and Japanese wine as well. How would you really, two things. We would like to know about the challenges that Grover Zampa has been facing in terms of establishing till today in this Indian market. And secondly, how would you really compare Indian market with the Chinese or the Japanese wine markets?
First, the comparison between probably China and Japan is the easiest to do. The middle class in India is, in my view, much more westernized than its Chinese counterpart, and it's more westernized than the Japanese middle class was in the 60s, when the wine boom started, 60s and 70s. One example is that when Indian tourists travel overseas, they don't travel in groups. When Chinese tourists travel today, there's a bus, there's a guide who's waving with a flag, there's a translator. That's how they travel, and that's how the Japanese traveled up until the early 80s, mid 80s. They traveled in groups. The Indians don't travel in groups. They are more accustomed to the Western world. They read the same books. They watch the same show on Netflix or Amazon. So there's a greater familiarity and a system that makes it easier to adopt Western habits in India than in Japan in the past. Not now, Japan has changed, and in China. So I think I expect the wine to take over, to be a part of the normal habits of the Indian middle class within the next 15-20 years. It should happen.
Is 15-20 years too early, or how is it? It's a long way. What do you think? How is Indian wine marketing?
No, it will happen. I mean, today wine is the fastest growing alcohol segment in India. It grows faster than spirits and whiskey, even faster than beer. And the premium segment of wine grows even faster. So it will happen. And one key thing, the main driver, I think, for the growth of wine are women in India. Women don't drink spirits, at least not in public. Whereas wine now is completely acceptable socially. Wine and sparkling, completely acceptable socially. And we see that in consumption at home tends to be dominated by women. Their husbands still drink whiskey at home, but
Mr. Viswanathan, I just wanted to circle back to the part where you actually mentioned about the gestation period of about 15 to 20 years. So is that the sort of timeline that you kept in mind while you thought of making the investments into Grover Zampa and, of course, some of the new wineries that you've picked up? And the second part of that question is that what sort of a monumental effort do you think it'll take for the Indian wine industry to reach that same level in terms of maturity as well in that time frame?
that's a huge effort. But no, the world average consumption of wine is around 5 or 6 bottles per capita. In India, we are at the spoonful, maybe 2. The best. So if we want to reach world averages, it means consuming in India something like 6 to 10 billion bottles of wine, starting from 30 to 40 million today. So that's a huge effort. And then you only reached world average. You are not in the top. You're just average. Now, the Chinese market today is probably around 3 billion bottles. Say 2 bottles per capita. That's the target for the next 20 years, 25 years. The target is to be where China is today.
Oh, so a huge gap.
Still well below world average, but we just where China is today, to go from 0 to 2 bottles per capita per year. That's the challenge.
So we are a toddling baby, yeah?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Desai. So, but in that case, then do you think the environment as well as the sort of opportunities that are there in India currently are encouraging? Because the only way that gap can be bridged faster is if there are more players which kind of enter the market, or the portfolio widens faster. But given the sort of environment that we have in India, do you think that's really possible to speed it up?
As a background, today the alcohol consumption in India is relatively low by world standards. And obviously, with economic growth, that will increase. Now, wine is particularly low and it will increase faster. And it's obvious that in the current context, the more resources there is, the faster that growth will be. It's not only a matter of taking a share of the throat of somebody else. It's a matter of creating new drinkers, new consumers, new lifestyle. So the more resources you inject into this wine business, the faster the growth will be. Because in a sense, you're not really competing against others. You're attracting a whole new set of consumers, younger consumers, straight out of the university, who are more familiar with wine or alcohol, which are viewed as healthier, and women. That's a brand new market, not targeted by the whiskey guys and to some extent not even by the beer guys. So you mean resources will definitely.
So you mean to say that you will not be taking over the share of either beer or whiskey, but it will be totally a natural growth.
Yeah, I mean,
you're creating new consumers. The new consumers could be existing drinker of whiskey or beer?
True. Now it is very difficult to convert hardcore whiskey drinker to wine. Now, what is possible is to ensure that their wives will drink some wine. That's one thing. And the second is the younger generation, people who are in university and will soon reach the drinking age, are more likely today to start with wine or beer than to start with spirits like their fathers did.
Yeah. The initial stages you should be touching
and
on.
wine is a more social drink. To be fair, you rarely drink wine alone. You drink wine because you are with a few friends and you have a chat or you have a meal. You can drink whiskey alone and read your book or read your newspaper. Wine is a very social drink. It's rarely drunk alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that will attract, I think, the social aspect will attract more of the younger generation to wine.
Ravi, how is your market share today in India and against Sula?
Sula is roughly half the market. I mean, if you count only domestic wines, Sula is probably 50% of the market. If you count imported, Sula is probably 50% of the market.
And your share? What, 30%?
Yeah, between 20 to 25.
Okay. Are there any more wineries on plate now to acquire for you?
They are very...
one just recently, York Winery has been... But you got a good major chunk, Bharamati and both.
Yeah, but I don't... There are no real sizable winery today to be acquired.
Okay.
But what is happening is grower like I suspect also like Sula and others, and Sula and Fratelli, as the consumption grows, production will grow, and we will need new production facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you put aside the impact of COVID, we are always running at close to full capacity.
Oh, really?
So very growth will mean building new wineries, adding more tanks. Whether this is happening by buying smaller players or by creating from scratch a winery, we'll see as we go along. But we will need to create more wineries. There's no doubt about it.
But you are already expanding present one in Bangalore, right? Modernizing the winery.
We have one winery in Bangalore, which actually is the oldest operating winery in India.
Oh, they're excellent, yeah.
And now we intend to start building a brand new winery because our winery is running at full capacity.
I think you are investing.
And it was built in the late 80s, early 90s, at the time with a different kind of concept as a small boutique winery. The technologies that we need to deploy today to make quality wines require not just upgrading the winery, it requires building a brand new winery, which is our plan. So we hope to have that finished and running for harvest 2023.
Oh,
between 23 and...
Mr. Ravi, sorry to interrupt, but I really want to know. The State of Art is one of the boutique wineries that is being acquired by growers at Nandi Hills, right? That is the one. And is there any other more modernized concept in your mind? Or is it the same one that you're
talking about? No. Today we are... the understanding that we have of wine technology and the architecture that's required to do a modern, efficient winery has made enormous progress over the last 15, 20 years. So our idea is to build a brand new winery from scratch in Karnataka because current winery is running full.
Okay.
We have no more space to expand and no more capacity to expand.
How much are you investing in this new winery?
New winery will cost somewhere in the order of 100 crores.
100
between
crores?
the buildings and the equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for a winery which will produce 5 to 6 million bottles a year.
160 million bottles.
No, 5 to 6 million. That's
5
bottles.
to 6 million bottles a year. Okay. So that will take care of another maybe 5 or 6 years from now.
Yeah.
If the market expands in the same way.
Yeah. But we have expanded in Maharashtra because now we have 3 wineries in Maharashtra.
Okay.
In Charoza and Baramati and in Nasik, we have 3 wineries. We have some space to expand in those wineries, especially in Charoza.
Okay.
It's a big land plot, and the winery was built big, but in 2 or 3 years' time, it will also be full.
Okay.
And then we'll look for another site in Maharashtra in maybe 3 or 4 years' time from now.
Yeah.
Apart from expanding in India and increasing the production level of wines in India, does Grower Zampa also have any stakes or has any other subsidiary vineyards or wineries abroad? Or that is one question. Secondly, are we also planning to have any imported brands under the Grower Zampa GAM?
What do you mean?
I mean, does Grower Zampa plan to import any kind of wines and launch?
We have already started importing wines.
You bought over one winery in France, right? Am I right?
We have Grover is a sister company in France, which is a winery in Burgundy.
Oh, Burgundy region. Okay.
So we are importing wines, and after COVID is the situation normalizes, we'll expand our import portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Not only to wines which are made by sister companies, but also to third-party wine. The plan is to expand once the situation becomes normal, probably this winter or next year.
Mm-hmm.
So all these activities of expanding expanding in India and also acquiring or merging other small boutique wineries in India, plus the plans to have imported wines in India, towards this would really lead Grower Zampa to be a monopolistic market player.
It doesn't even make sense to try to beat Sula.
Okay.
Sula 4 times bigger. It's no point. We specialize in our own wines, and we don't do. We try to focus on the premium part of the markets. We probably have more labels in the over 1,000 MRP per bottle range than Sula. And our most expensive wine are more expensive than Sula or Fratelli. And in that category 1,000 and above, we have many more labels and probably bigger volume also than most the other players. But as we don't see Sula or Fratelli as competitors. The markets in a normal situation, the market should grow faster than all of us.
Oh, okay.
And we need people who will go out and introduce first-time drinkers to wines. We know that wine is different from. You can drink the same whiskey every day. If you're a Johnny Walker fan or Black Label or whatever, you drink that every day. Even if you like beer, you are Kingfisher, you see Kingfisher your whole life. You never drink the same wine every day. No wine drinker will drink the same wine, the same label every day. So there's a need for diversity change in wine that you don't have in whiskey or beer. So even if somebody becomes a wine drinker because he tried Sula, it doesn't mean that you will never try Grover. We in fact almost 100% sure that one day we'll try Grover. So this is not Whereas if you love
Yeah.
black bull, you're never going to try something else.
Okay, you're not competing
There
in any way.
there is a stickiness in whiskey, and to a large extent in normal beer, not craft beer. In normal beer, there's a stickiness that doesn't exist in wine. Even if you love a particular wine of Grover, you will never drink it every night.
Yeah,
You will
that's the
change
beauty of
something else, maybe of a different brand, maybe the same producer, but you will not drink the same wine every day. You will drink the same whiskey every day, no problem, your whole life.
Mr. Viswanathan, I had a couple of questions. So one of them is actually, what is the sort of, it's more of a basic sorts where, what is the sort of impact that the pandemic has kind of had in the operations over the last 1 year? And the sort of follow-up to that question is that, has that really cut the sort of lead time that you've had? The reason is because largely in the Indian environment today, a lot of, as you mentioned yourself as well, some of the best wines that you would have would be at your winery itself, which means that wine tourism and people really visiting the winery and staying there is a big market and a big play for most manufacturers. So in that sense as well, you would not have seen those visitors as well or that tourism happening. So that's kind of put you back as well, the second part of that question.
Yeah, absolutely. COVID has had a devastating impact on the whole industry. For many months, sales and compared to other alcohol bev, the other alcohol bev segments, traditionally, wine was more consumed in restaurant than at home, historically. Now, because of COVID and some other factors, it just changed couple of years ago. Now consumption is much more at home because a lot of the restaurants are still not fully reopened, and people tend to shy away from going to restaurants. And some of them didn't make it through the crisis. So that's a big issue. So it has impacted sales. Now we hope that in a few months the situation will be more normal, meaning that enough people will be vaccinated and the state governments and the central government will manage to finally get a hold of the pandemic. And then things should restart rapidly. The operations per se of the wineries were not really impacted because we always, even with the lockdowns and all these measures, we could always ensure that the work in the fields and the work at the winery to produce wine or to take care of the grapes was done. So there's no concern about that, no particular concern about that. The main issue is very difficult to sell anything for many months. And it has created an environment where some of the players have resorted to aggressive discounting in order to clear up stock, which in the long run is not good.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's even stupid in the long run.
So people will have a habit of buying the same price, cheaper price.
Yeah.
That experiment doesn't go.
In fact, that was the next part of the question that I kind of had, and I was hoping that you would actually come to that. So, considering from a standpoint that yes, in the longer run, these are obviously not the best strategies that most of these wineries would have adopted. But given that sort of a scenario, does it make it a good opportune time for investors like you to probably snap up more wineries or larger or increase their portfolio in that respect as well? And number two is that assuming that maybe we see another 7 to 8 months of this pandemic, which from the second wave of what's happening in India currently is what we are looking at, then does it become very difficult or probably impossible for most of those wineries to sustain?
Well, you know very well that historically, with rare exceptions, the only exception over that period was Sula, Indian wineries have not made money.
Absolutely.
So for whatever reason, they are not. I mean, we know the reason, but they have not made money. Sula, to a large extent, has been an exception, but it has also been badly affected by the crisis.
Mhm.
Now, there are many issues about that. One which is clear is because wine is such a small market today, the pricing power that the wineries have with retail and with restaurant is low. It means that you need to give schemes which are substantially bigger than schemes given by whiskey manufacturers or by breweries.
Right.
And those schemes effectively go into the pockets of retail shop owner or restaurant owner and not to consumers.
Yes.
Now, as the industry grows, the schemes will decrease in percentage mechanically. But we need to grow to be able to have any kind of pricing power.
Yeah.
And we are a long way from that. So there's only one viable strategy, is to grow.
Ravi, but in such a situation that happens in Maharashtra, I mean, scheme is given everywhere in Delhi, Mumbai, everywhere, where you are one of the worst sufferer. They would like to, I mean, as you put it, that whiskey producers have, it's attractive scheme for them, which benefits dealer and the shopkeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And doesn't pass it on to consumers at all.
Yeah, and the stickiness of their brands benefits also whiskey manufacturers, because it's difficult to sell to a whiskey drinker a brand that he doesn't like. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you go to a wine shop, what the guy or the salesperson will sell to you is wherever he gets a bigger scheme. He doesn't care whether you like it. That's what he will sell to you.
Yeah, one bottle, one free, like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what is happening in Maharashtra.
So it means that the only way to get over that is to create brands which the customer values and will insist on those brands in shops or restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is to grow bigger so that you have more pricing power, at least to reach a level comparable to beer or whiskey. So that the schemes become less problematic and then the profitability is restored.
So, in this new course, do you think some brand ambassadors do really play an important role in promoting the brand?
Yes, and
yes and no.
Brand promotion is a very complex matter in India, especially for alcohol products because of all the restrictions that you have on advertising. It is helpful to have brand ambassadors, but that cannot be your only strategy.
Yes, so when you're saying wine tourism,
wine tourism is a key component of brand building and brand education. People who come to your winery are much more likely in the future to order your wine, or any wine for that matter. That's why a lot of our efforts in the coming 1-2 years will be towards wine tourism.
Wine tourism in Nasik specifically, because it is Nasik being the capital, wine capital of the country, or are you? I mean,
well, that's a misconception. People think that 80% of the wines made in India are Nasik, which is true. But people don't realize that 80% of the medals won by Indian wineries in international competitions were for wine which originates from Karnataka.
Bangalore.
Not only Bangalore, Ampi Valley as well.
Yes. Yeah.
But 80% of the wine produced is from Nasik. 80% of the medals and the awards are in Bangalore, to simplify.
Oh, fantastic. Are you originally from Karnataka?
No, Pondicherry.
Pondicherry, Pondi. Okay. You write your surname Viswanathan, right? Normally it is Vishwanathan.
Yeah, but Pondicherry being French, the spelling is different from the rest of Tamil Nadu.
Okay. But the Nandi Hills, there is an existing wine tourism does take place, right?
Yes,
Because
yes.
you
No,
have a regular guide and they...
Yeah. No, the plan is to substantially increase that effort.
Oh, okay. Right, I understood.
And to do so, we have today 4 wineries in India. One in Bangalore, one in Nasik, one in Pune near Baramati, and one in Charoza. We want to, within the next 2 years, we want to create wine tourism setup in all those facilities. That means some rooms to stay, some restaurants, guided tours, tasting rooms. Some already exist, but we will add to it.
Excellent, yeah. Very good. What are the other strategies you will be using, Ravi, to promote your wineries as well as wine in general? It's a very difficult task, challenging task for you.
Yeah,
You yourself is a brand ambassador, like once upon a time, Vijay Malay used to be a brand ambassador of Kingfisher, once upon a time.
No, there are lots of marketing activities that are undertaken by us. We have some activity on social media. We try to do wine dinners. We do wine tasting with consumers in restaurants. We get influencers and others from the social media world to come and visit the wineries. So all of that is a continuous effort. It's complicated in India because of legal restriction on promoting alcohol.
On promoting, yeah.
But
yes.
But we do our part, and the others are Sula and Fratelli also doing all sorts of things to promote wine. And there is no doubt that even Indians who have not tried wine yet know more about wine than they used 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes, right. So gestation period is very long, right?
It is
10 to 15 years minimum. Normally it is 3 to 4 years.
If you are in vodka, you have your grains, you distill them today, you bottle them tonight, and tomorrow you can sell them in the shop. That's vodka.
But that's vodka, no?
At the vineyard, my first usable harvest is in 3 years. And once I've my grapes, I need the wine at least in 1 year in my cellar before I can sell it. So even if I decide now to increase my production, the first bottle I'll sell will be in 4 years.
Oh.
And the premium wine will be 5 or 6 years from now.
Okay. It's like Scotch.
This is not the same time frame. If you want to produce whiskey, you have your molasses. You have sort of sugar in India. You can have molasses any day of the year. You distill it. You put it some coloring inside. You put it in a cask if you make it fancy, and you sell it almost immediately.
Yeah, they make money also. Instant money.
For wine, it's not the same. If you want to create a vineyard in India, it takes at least 3 years to get a good harvest.
Right.
If not more. And a good wine will take at least 2 years. An entry-level wine will take 1 year, but a good wine will take at least 2 years.
That's true.
Mr. Viswanathan, I actually just want to take you back to you spoke just about the quality. So my question is more about the quality of the produce, because the wine essentially is as good as the produce you have in it, obviously. So do you think that from that perspective, in terms of soil as well, we have certain limitations in that regard, which is also probably one of the reasons why we are not able to produce the same sort of quantity as well as the quality when it comes to wine? Apart from, of course, infrastructure. But the thing is that capital is something which you can obviously always get. It's a lot easier than generating soil, because at the end of the day, grapes and the produce are the most important things.
Okay, let me backtrack a bit. Today in India, especially Grover, we don't produce the best wine we can. we produce the best wine we can sell, not the best wine we can produce.
Okay.
We know exactly what to do to make better wines, what work we need to do in vineyards, what work we need to do at the winery to make better wines. And we are doing it in small quantities every year. We add new labels. That's why over the last 4 or 5 years, we've added 15, 20 labels. We keep on adding labels, new bottles. When I first became a shareholder in Grover, there was La Réserve Red was our flagship wine and the top of the line.
Yes.
Today, La Réserve itself is 5 or 6 labels because we have a white, we have a red, we have a rosé, you have all kinds of things, you have sparkling, and we've added all kinds of different labels above.
Okay.
So as we grow, and as the middle class grows, as people become upgrade their taste, we'll produce more and more and better quality wines.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay,
But,
it's too early.
So essentially, then in that case, you're basically saying that obviously you're looking to get more of a price to value sort of a ratio, and that's exactly what you're trying to obviously sell, because at the end of the day, you're not looking at the top line in terms of doing the best quality, but trying to make something which is more affordable and present good quality. But in that case, then don't you think that there has to be a substantial increase in growth in that market as well for you to have certain sort of stake or purchasing power and value as well, especially when you're considering the, the shelf life or rather the shelf space. So as to you were saying when it came to retail, where you don't have that sort of purchasing power as a category at this point.
Yes, I mean, growth will definitely help. The bigger we are, the better it will be. The lower our production costs will become, the lower the cost of bottles, the lower the cost of per bottle, the lower the cost of label per label, the easier it will be to have to be on shelves or to be in wine lists. So growth will definitely help. When you are small, it's tougher, but we'll get there. I mean, this industry is the fastest component of the alcohol industry, the fastest growing component. We'll get there. It takes time. It's never going to be. It's extremely difficult in India, given the fact that wine is an agricultural product, to grow at more than 20-25%. Even with all the resources in the world, because you need land, you need to plant, you need to wait for your first harvest. So growing at 15% is a reasonable objective, maybe growing a little faster, but growing much beyond 25 on a sustainable period doesn't make sense, not doable, just because it's an agricultural product. So we are increasing the resources we're deploying. We continue to grow. We will continue to make better and better wine because our understanding of viticulture is better, right, especially tropical viticulture. Our technology is better. We keep on getting more and more newer things. We understand more now the environment. We are more careful about sustainability than we were in the past. So we avoid, as much as possible, chemical pesticide or fertilizers in favor in replacing them by natural ones. So all of this effort is being done.
Right. But are you happy? Sorry, please continue. Sorry.
Objectively, the quality of wines has improved a lot in the last decade in India. Everywhere, not only us, everywhere.
I understand. So from that perspective, I mean, are you happy with the sort of support that you're getting from the governments, or do you think that could be a little better?
We have virtually no support. There are some VAT refund schemes that some producing states have implemented because they realize that wine is an agricultural product. It's important. It creates jobs, and it creates jobs on land which is not very fertile, which is not being used often for other crops. We use very little water compared to other crops. We don't use fertile lands. To make good wines, you need crappy land. So So we are bringing also all these advantages. Some state governments like Maharashtra and Karnataka have recognized the value that the wine industry brings and are trying to help. By and large, if you think of it in a different way, India is an agricultural country. More than half of the population is in villages, right?
Right.
Most crops are heavily subsidized by central and state government. Wine grapes subsidies are zero. We don't get help. But we produce, we create a large number of jobs. 1 acre of land or vineyard creates roughly 1 job in the countryside and 1 job in the city or in the winery. But we do it without subsidies.
And contributing to government, employment and other.
It will be very
taxes.
helpful to have wine under the GST scheme.
Yeah,
that
but
will make it a lot easier, but we are far away from it.
Yeah, none of the alcohol products are under GST.
Yeah, but
you pay for input, but no output. I mean, can't. That's
which
true.
is a cost. Which is a cost.
It's a loss.
Yeah.
Yes. Ravi, another thing, you don't have plan like Sula.
If I may just on this very point, one of the reasons, there are a few of them, but one of the key reasons why the wine industry took off in China in the, say, 20 years ago, 20, 25 years ago, around 2000 or 1995, when it all started, is because the central government in China wanted to, first to create jobs in the countryside, but also had concerns about public health issues with alcohol. The Chinese were consuming huge amounts of home distilled alcohol, hard spirits of various kinds. And for public health reasons, the government, the Chinese government, decided to support, subsidize, publicize, promote wine as a healthy alternative to hard spirits, especially the kind that's brewed that's distilled at home.
Yes, right.
And that's where the industry took off. Today, the Chinese, the size of the vineyards in China is comparable to France or Spain or Italy, even though the production is still lower. The absolute acreage is the same magnitude. So unless you have a government public health policy that favors low alcohol drink, especially the drinks that are consumed with food, unless that happens, it will be tough.
Yeah, it's a long way to go.
That's if you want to fight alcoholism, especially the nasty aspects of
overdrinking,
social aspects of alcoholism.
Right. But Mr. Viswanathan, that's unrealistic, right? That really is not going to happen because one of the biggest contributors to the exchequer is and to the excise is obviously the alcobev companies. So which means the moment that revenue drops, then automatically every development, which is the X amount of money which is coming from these manufacturers, is going to disappear. So do you think that's realistically possible?
Yeah. First, do a simple calculation. Take a beer, take a Kingfisher beer or a McDowell, whatever whiskey, and a bottle of ordinary wine. Compute the amount of taxes which is paid by milliliter of pure alcohol. And you will find easily that wine is much more taxed than everything else. If you want to get drunk in India, you need to buy whiskey. You should avoid wine. If you want to be drunk and you are poor, buy whiskey. So if there was a substitution in favor of wine and the same amount of alcohol was consumed, the states would be a lot richer. Not counting countless million jobs in the countryside in vineyards. Because wine is much more taxed. In fact, in wine, what you are taxing is water.
Understand. Viswanathan, can you just tell us what, according to you, is the overall size and the volume of the market currently? And vis-a-vis that, what is the sort of growth that you've basically seen year on year in the past few years for Grover Zampa?
Historically, growth has been in the sort, if you average over the last 10 years, maybe 15% as an annual growth rate.
Mm-hmm.
What is the over?
As I said, it's possible to grow a bit faster, but not much faster. To reach 20-25% growth every year, you need to have substantially more capital invested.
Okay.
And it may happen, but by and large, something for 10 to 15% growth over the next generation is something that should be achievable for the wine industry as a whole.
Understand. And what, according to you, is the overall size and the volume of the market in India currently?
Today, it's about, my best guess is between 30 to 40 million bottles a year.
Understand. Okay.
That's the overall market, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not counting the port wine, which is a separate section. I'm just counting.
Which is a cheaper one, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the one which is fortified with sugar and all in some state on the rules.
Yes. But what about export also? You've been exporting to many countries, right?
We have been exporting historically for a long time. Exports are typically represent 10% of production.
Okay.
It has not been a focus.
Okay.
In the past, it will change now. It's changing now. Two things have helped. One, we have started having more medals in international competition than before.
Okay.
So it makes it easier to prove to an American, a German, or a Japanese that the quality is there because somebody has given it. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing is over the last 10, 15 years, there's been a rapid increase in Indian cuisine around the world, especially in places where Indian cuisine were not traditionally present, so say outside of the UK. The UK or the US to a large extent, but in many countries like Japan, Germany, France, Indian cuisine is now substantially more present than it was. So it gives us more avenues to export.
Right.
And there's a very recent phenomenon over the last maybe less than 10 years of Indian fine dining outlets overseas.
Yes, that's increased now.
In the past, it used to be your curry house or your simple food.
Yeah.
Now you have Indian fine dining overseas, which gives us more places where we can hope to sell, especially the high-end wines that we produce in India.
Right, like
typically. Go to a fancy French restaurant anywhere in the world, you know that most of the wine list will be French. If you go to a fancy Italian restaurant anywhere in the world, most of its wine will be Italian. Not all, most. We have not reached that stage yet with Indian restaurants, but hopefully within the next 5-6 years, we should be making inroads.
Yeah, but the same way like beer is being sold like Kingfisher in about 16,000 outlets in UK. So you find most of the outlets having Cobra beer or Kingfisher. Is the reason that you attribute of the faster growth in wine is because the base is very small, right? Compared to the spirits and other.
Well, there are many reasons. One is wine, the base is small, so it's easier to grow.
Yes.
Also, wine is seen as a more healthier, women-friendly drink than spirits.
Yes, true.
And it's in a social context. In social context, mixing men and women, wine is more acceptable in India. And the other thing, which is both a challenge and an opportunity, is that Indians have this habit of drinking before eating. Typically, you go to your club, you have your whiskeys, and then you eat. But alcohol during the meal is not as common as before the meal. Whereas wine has no competition during the meal. Wine is usually, especially in the Western world, consumed during the meal and not before. And during the meal, wine is it's not competing against whiskey. So it's both an opportunity and a challenge.
Yeah, Indians do always reverse thing, we don't drink whiskey after dinner,
Yeah.
unlike European countries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to restaurant, I mean, before COVID, obviously, but if you went to restaurant recently in India and compared it to 10 years ago, now you are more likely to see wine bottles on the table than 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes, absolutely right.
This habit of drinking alcohol, especially wine, and to some extent beer during dinner, is now common practice. So even people who are hardcore whiskey drinkers during the meal will have a glass of wine.
That's true, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's both an opportunity because whiskey is not competing against wine during the meal. It's also a challenge to you can consume alcohol with food, and it's actually better and safer and healthier to consume alcohol with food. Today, most of the market is red wine. Red wine is maybe 60 to 70% of the market. Sparkling is still limited.
Okay.
A lot of sparkling actually consumed in Sunday brunches in hotels because it comes as a free flow package. But by and large, the core product is red wine.
Now, what expansion plan are you looking at now in the near future? Because Uttarakhand has a Himalayan region has a good water, right? And it is said that the quality of the soil is very good in Himalayan range.
First, tropical. India is a tropical country.
Right.
That we use for wine. We are in the northern hemisphere, right? The grapes that we use for wine, it's very different from the cycle is very different than what happens in the rest of the northern hemisphere. We have a harvest in February, March, and not in August, September, like the rest of the northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
And we have two cycles. And the main reason for the harvest is the monsoon in June, July, August. Rain is bad. Constant rain is very bad for wine grapes.
Okay.
So now which begs, so that's why we do a winter harvest.
Okay.
February, March harvest.
Okay.
Now, it is theoretically possible in the Himalayas to have the same sort of climate as in France or in Germany and produce wine with a September harvest.
Oh, okay.
The problem is most of the Himalaya is facing the monsoon and receives monsoon in June, July, August.
Okay.
Which would make the wines, those grapes not suitable. The only parts of the Himalaya which are suitable are the ones which are in the rain shadow.
Okay.
Because the monsoon clouds don't go much beyond 4,000 meters. So if you're on the valley, which is on the other side,
okay,
and in the Himalayas on the other side, you are very quickly into Pakistan or China, so you need to be careful. So it's only in those valleys in between.
Yes,
where
yes. So
monsoon doesn't reach.
So not possible, practically. Yeah. Practically
so
not possible.
It is not easy to find a place in Himalayas to grow wine grapes on the normal northern hemisphere cycle. We are looking for it. Hopefully we'll be able to do it. But
Mr. Viswanathan, so what was the objective of investing into the wine industry when you initially started? The reason I ask that is because, of course, coming from, being a VC, then the objective or the at most times you essentially tend to invest into something and then kind of move out at the best times. So was that the thought process initially, and then that changed over a period of time? And then once I hear your answer, I might have a follow-up question as well to this.
It's very pragmatic. For the time being, we have a plan to grow the company. We're growing the company. we'll see what happens. It's entirely possible to think that one day we might sell to someone. If someone wants to buy, we'll never say no on principle.
Right.
You want to buy, to do what terms, what condition, what's your business plan? So we're happy to discuss. It's not the issue. Ultimately, even though for some of us it's a passion, the product is a passion, and we love spending time in the vineyards. We love coming up with new ideas in viticulture or in winemaking. That's part of the passion. Ultimately, it's a business.
Right. So if a good opportunity would come along even now, then maybe in a couple of years you'd probably look at disinvesting and moving out as well.
Or welcoming new shareholders, not necessarily disinvesting, because the possibility for expansions are so big in India that actually money is needed to build, not necessarily to buy out people.
Oh,
why not?
So, you'll never think of offloading your stake.
Can never say never. But there are enough projects in the pipeline which can be done.
Okay, good. Anything else?
We don't have ideas to grow. We have the ideas. We have identified things that we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's an opportunity to raise capital, additional resources, fine. If somebody wants to buy some of the shareholders of the company, fine. I mean, we are very pragmatic. There's no taboo.
No taboo, no
taboo, and there's no emotional attachment. We do love the product. We have find a lot of fun making good wines, and hopefully making better wines in the future.
Mm-hmm.
But it's business.
Okay. Good luck to you.